Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the smoky, crowded world of a Viking longhouse, where sleep is more of a suggestion than a guarantee. Imagine this. You're standing in the slush of a Scandinavian twilight, boots soaked, fingers numb, breath misting into the damp air. In front of you looms your shelter for the night, a longhouse. It looks impressive in its way, a hulking timber skeleton stuffed with moss, mud, and woven reeds. The roof slopes low and steep like it's hunched against the cold. You can see smoke sneaking out through the holes near the top, but there's no chimney. There's no insulation. There's definitely no mattress waiting inside. You duck through the low, creaking doorway and step directly into the past. The first thing you notice, before your eyes adjust, before you can even make out faces, is the smell. It hits you like a wool-wrapped punch. Wood smoke, sweat, wet wool, fermented fish, hay, manure. It's like someone brewed a stew out of medieval life and spilled it in the entryway. You wrinkle your nose, but no one else reacts. This is normal. This is home. Inside, it's one giant room. No walls, no privacy. Just a central hearth running down the middle, glowing faintly red as flames lick low around charred logs. Above it, the rafters are black with soot. Years of it, layered thick like the bark of a tree. The smoke drifts upward but hangs there, suspended in a thick haze just below the beams. Every time the wind hisses through the thatched roof, the smoke billows sideways and coats your lungs in Viking incense. You'll get used to it. Or you won't. Either way, you're breathing it in. The floor underfoot is packed dirt, uneven and cold. Someone's scattered straw over the worst patches, but that's mostly for appearances. You shift your weight and feel the mud suck at your boot heel. To your left, a goat eyes you with the weary indifference of something that's seen you trip over yourself twice already today. To your right, two boys are arguing over a carved knucklebone game, one of them already nursing what will probably become a black eye. In the far corner, a woman is combing lice out of her child's hair by candlelight. She hums as she works. It's almost soothing. Almost. Your bed? Oh, you sweet summer child. Your bed is a low wooden platform along the wall, lined with straw and maybe a sheep pelt if you're lucky. Tonight, someone's already taken the good spots, so you're left with the part near the back, the section closest to the animals. Which is to say, you're sleeping next to a cow named Hilda, who snores louder than your uncle and smells vaguely of turnips. But at least she's warm. You toss your blanket, a woolen thing that smells like old cheese and wet fur, over your straw pile and settle in. Instantly, something beneath you shifts. You freeze. Mouse? Lizard? Loki's idea of a prank? You lift the edge of the straw cautiously and spot nothing. That means it's still in there. Good luck. Around you, the longhouse is a living organism. People murmur, shift, cough, whisper, laugh. A child starts crying. Someone farts loudly and without shame. A hand reaches across you in the dim light, grabbing for a water skin. You recoil instinctively, knocking over a clay bowl that someone left too close to your straw. It cracks loudly. No one scolds you. No one even looks up. This is normal. You're learning. The dinner smell still lingers. Smoked herring, stale bread, some kind of oniony root stew. It wasn't bad, honestly, just repetitive. You suspect every meal here tastes like a bog boiled for an hour. And you better like it, because it's the same tomorrow and the day after, and probably until the fjords thaw. Next to the hearth, an old man begins to speak. His voice is gravelly, with a rhythm like a boat creaking in the tide. He's telling a saga something about a man who turned into a bear and then married a woman who had the gift of foresight. No one interrupts. A few people even hush their neighbors. This is how history lives here. Passed from mouth to mouth, half remembered, half invented, but somehow more alive than the sagas in dusty books. You listen, eyes half closed, letting the story blend into the background hum of fire, feet, and far-off animal noises. But you're tired now, or at least your body is. Your mind is less sure. Because despite the warmth and the closeness, sleep is elusive. It's not just the straw poking your back or the smoke stinging your eyes. It's the noise, the movement, the sheer presence of so many other people. You can hear every breath, every shift, every whispered word. It's like sleeping in a school hallway during a fire drill. But this hallway is full of Vikings. And goats. You pull the blanket tighter around yourself and exhale slowly. The roof creaks overhead. Something scurries in the beams. Someone laughs in their sleep. A baby lets out a sudden wail before being hushed against a breast. All of this happens inches from you, separated by nothing but shadow and shared air. And yet, you're still here, still trying. Some historians believe the Viking Longhouse fostered a sense of communal identity stronger than any other European culture at the time. When you live like this, no walls, no secrets, you learn to adapt, or you leave. But those who stayed knew every snore, every cough, every silence. They learned to read the night like a book, when the wind changed, when a horse shifted in the barn, when someone had a bad dream. You're just beginning to understand that now, wrapped in your scratchy blanket with your breath fogging up in the cold. It won't be easy. You're not sleeping tonight. Not really. But maybe you'll rest. Maybe you'll adjust. Or maybe you'll just lie there, blinking up at the smoky rafters, wondering why you didn't stay in the fantasy of horned helmets and roaring fires. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You close your eyes. The fire crackles. Somewhere, a chicken lays an egg. Welcome to Viking sleep. The smoke's still in your throat when you wake up. If you can call what just happened sleep. More like a prolonged blinking contest with the ceiling beams, broken only by a dream in which someone was chewing loudly directly into your ears. Except, no, that wasn't a dream. That was Olaf. He's 3 feet away and halfway through a cold turnip he saved from last night's dinner. You think about throwing your boot at him. You don't, because your boot is currently your pillow. There's no such thing as a Viking bedtime, not really. People doze when they can, when the fire's low, when the kids have finally stopped chattering, when the animals quiet down. But deep, uninterrupted sleep, that's a luxury few here get. The Longhouse never fully sleeps. It murmurs, it breathes, it shifts. And at night, every sound is magnified tenfold. Your throat's dry from the smoke, your face itchy from the straw, and your hips are sore from sleeping on uneven wood. You sit up slowly, trying not to elbow the little girl snuggled up beside you, who's drooled all over your sleeve. She snores like an elderly fox. You stand, brush hay off your knees, and immediately bump into someone's rear end. They grunt, roll over, and go right back to snoring. Let's talk about the environment, shall we? A Viking longhouse is a sensory overload at all hours, but nighttime is when the real magic happens. The hearth that kept the room bearably warm earlier is now radiating a low, dense heat, making everything within 6 feet of it feel like a sauna. But step 1 foot beyond that radius, your toes go numb from the cold draft seeping through the moss-packed walls. It's a bizarre temperature dance. Sweaty chest, frozen feet, warm forehead, icy back. It's like your body is trying to experience all 4 seasons at once. And the smell? Somehow worse now. During the day, open doors and outside work keep the air moving. At night, the doors are barred, the shutters closed, and the full bouquet of Viking life gets trapped inside. You can taste it. Sweat, mead, boiled fish, old leather, barnyard funk. It's like breathing through a sock left in a sauna. You suddenly realize how blessed you are to live in a world with scented candles and fabrizzi. The livestock don't sleep in a barn, by the way. That would be wasteful. In winter, especially, they're brought inside the longhouse because they provide free heat and, well, they're part of the family economy. So there's your friend Hilda again, the cow, snoring gently and exhaling gusts of bovine breath across your ankles. A chicken clucks softly in her sleep. Somewhere under someone's sleeping platform, a pig farts, and 3 people groan in unison. This is your white noise machine now. And let's not forget about the bedding situation. Straw-stuffed mattresses are standard, but the quality varies wildly. Some are relatively fresh, still holding their shape and not too itchy. Others, moldy, half-rotted, filled with bugs. You can't exactly pop into the Viking version of IKEA for a replacement. Bedding is often reused season after season. Wealthier families might have sacks stuffed with feathers or down, but unless you're chieftain-level important, your bed is probably filled with crushed hopes and hay mites. You scratch your arm. Again. You think it's the wool blanket, but deep down, you know that's wishful thinking. The itching is more alive than that. Some scholars suggest that nearly everyone in early medieval Scandinavia carried lice, fleas, or both. Combs carved from antler or bone have been found in burial sites, beautiful objects, often ornately decorated, but they were less for vanity and more for survival. You make a mental note to find one tomorrow, or maybe just shave your head. That's what the thralls do sometimes. Easier to avoid infestations when your scalp's a blank canvas. Meanwhile, your eyes burn. The smoke never stops. Without chimneys, the hearth's smoke collects in the upper parts of the room, but depending on wind and weather, it drifts lower during the night. You can feel it scratching your throat, coating your nostrils. Historians have proposed that respiratory issues must have been common, especially for elders or children who slept near the hearth. Some think it's why longhouses were often built with tall central roofs, to give the smoke a place to go. Whether that worked is still debated. You grab a cup of water from the clay jar near the door, trying not to think about whether anyone else's fingers have been in there. The water tastes faintly of ash and dirt. You sip anyway. At the other end of the longhouse, someone's lit another small flame. Not for warmth this time. It's a candle by a spindle. One of the women is still awake, spinning wool even at this hour. Her rhythm is slow, practiced. The wheel creaks gently. In a strange way, it's calming, like the sound of waves lapping a boat. You wonder if she's always awake this late. or if tonight is just restless for her too. There's a reason Vikings didn't sleep in long stretches like we do today. The idea of 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep? A fantasy. In many pre-industrial societies, segmented sleep was common. People would sleep a few hours, wake up to tend fires or animals or even talk or pray, and then go back to sleep later. It makes sense now. With this environment, you're not so much drifting into slumber as you are negotiating with it. Someone nearby starts mumbling. You freeze, unsure if they're talking to you. Then you realize they're dreaming. Loudly, something about ravens and gold. You try to tune it out. This would all be easier if there were beds, or rooms, or at least some kind of curtain. But nope. Longhouses were designed to keep everyone, family, servants, animals, in the same space. Privacy? Not a thing. Everyone sees everything. Every twitch, every snore, every embarrassing sleep sound. You don't even have the luxury of pretending you didn't drool on yourself. Everyone saw it, including Hilda. You lie back down, defeated. The straw crunches. Your back protests. The warmth of the fire is too far away to matter now, but you know if you scoot closer, you'll have to spoon with the goat. You compromise by curling into a shivering ball and pulling your scratchy blanket up to your nose. Someone burps. Outside, the wind moans against the walls, and snow taps against the roof. Inside, a man starts humming an old lullaby, a Norse melody about ships and stars and the sea. His voice is deep and shaky, like he's half singing, half remembering. No one joins in, but no one stops him either. For a moment, everything stills. The fire flickers. The animals are quiet. Even Olaf seems to have finished his turnip. You might just fall asleep after all. That's when someone steps on your foot. Hard. You yelp softly, and they mumble something that might have been an apology or just a word for clumsy idiot. You sigh and turn over, face buried in straw. This is Viking life. There are no earplugs. There is no lavender oil. There is only this: smoke, snoring, straw, and shared humanity. And maybe, eventually, sleep. It's still dark when you crack open one crusty, smoke-dried eyelid. But then again, it's always dark in here. Whether it's pre-dawn or deep midnight, the inside of the Longhouse clings to twilight like a jealous child. You can't tell what time it is, but judging by the shift in noises, less coughing, more groaning, it's probably somewhere in the murky space between late and too early. You're still in one piece. That's the good news. The bad news is that your entire left side has gone numb. Your blanket is missing, probably stolen by the child currently drooling on it, and you appear to have a small straw-colored hen roosting by your knee. She eyes you with mild contempt. You don't blame her, because tonight you've discovered something about Viking life that no history textbook quite prepares you for. You are not sleeping alone, and not just in the romantic sense. This house is a human can of pickled herring, and you're lodged somewhere in the middle. It's not a family home the way you know it. It's a communal furnace, a cross between a dormitory, a petting zoo, and an indoor campsite that got wildly out of hand. The Longhouse isn't just for you, your partner, and a toddler. It's for everyone you're even distantly related to, or economically entangled with. Your cousin from across the fjord? Yep. The elderly aunt who doesn't remember your name anymore. She's here. The shepherd boy who kind of works for you but mostly eats your food? Absolutely. You're all wedged together like cold sardines in a smoky barrel. Privacy is not a concept. It hasn't even been invented yet. You look around and realize that about 40 bodies are arranged throughout the house in loose, tangled clusters. Some are snuggled 2 or 3 deep under fur blankets. Others are flopped on their backs like bored seals. There's a weirdly intimate normalcy to it all, like this is just how humans work when walls are too expensive. Someone's foot is nestled uncomfortably close to your face. You try not to breathe too hard in that direction. You watch as an older woman across the hearth sits up slowly, adjusts her woolen cap, and begins rubbing a bit of whale oil into her knees. She catches your eye, nods once, then goes back to massaging with the weary resignation of someone who's done this every morning for 60 years. This is what family means here. Not hugs and game nights, but proximity, physical closeness, sharing food, stories, parasites, and oxygen. Every breath you take tonight has already passed through at least 3 other lungs. You live in an air-sharing economy now. Remember that idea you had about snuggling with a loved one under the northern lights? Cute. But not exactly compatible with your current situation, in which your personal snuggling radius includes a drunk uncle muttering about sea monsters, 2 half-naked children fighting over a piece of driftwood, and a thrall loudly grinding something in a wooden bowl at 3 a.m. Is it barley? Bones? You don't ask. Let's talk about space, or rather the lack thereof. Longhouses ranged in size depending on the wealth and importance of the family. Some stretched up to 90 feet long, but even those felt claustrophobic when filled with humans, animals, tools, stored food, wool, weapons, and the occasional ceremonial goat skull. The walls were built from massive timber frames filled with wattle and daub, sometimes insulated with turf. They weren't exactly airtight, but they kept out the worst of the wind, and all the light. The sleeping areas? Narrow platforms running along the sides of the hall, usually raised slightly above the dirt floor to avoid direct contact with mud, vermin, and occasional goat droppings. There were no partitions, no curtains, just some piles of straw, fur, or, if you were fancy, sheepskin stuffed bedding. That's it. Maybe you'd tie up a cloth for modesty if you were feeling shy, but good luck keeping it up in a room full of small children and curious goats. And these weren't just your blood relatives. A Viking longhouse often housed slaves, or, as they were called, thralls. They worked the land, maintained the fire, cooked, cleaned, served, and, yes, slept under the same roof. They didn't get the cozy end of the hall. Most would have curled up near the doors or hearth, exposed to every gust of cold air and every wandering toe. Their presence was constant, but silent. They're in your peripheral vision, always working, always moving, rarely speaking unless spoken to. It makes you uncomfortable, doesn't it? Good. History isn't supposed to feel tidy. You shift again, trying to stretch without kicking anyone. Fail. Twice. A hand drapes itself over your shin. It's not romantic, it's your second cousin. He's snoring and won't remember this in the morning. You gently push his arm back onto his straw pile and whisper a prayer to Odin for some personal space. Not that prayer works on cousins. As you lie there, eyes half-lidded, you listen to the Longhouse's orchestra of sleep. It's not beautiful. More like a chaotic symphony of nasal snores, guttural coughs, teeth grinding, sheep bleating, and the low groan of wood beams expanding in the cold. Every now and then, someone mumbles in their sleep, a half-sung lullaby, a muttered threat, an ancient name whispered like a spell. You realize you can map the family just by the sounds they make. The infant in the northeast corner squeaks like a hiccuping mouse. Aunt Fridas snores with a distinctive 3-note rhythm. Uncle Bjorn sleep talks about weather patterns. And you mostly just breathe quietly and contemplate whether you've ever been this tired while simultaneously not sleeping. Historically speaking, scholars still debate how deeply Viking Age families valued this kind of close-knit domestic living. Some suggest it created strong community bonds, a sense of resilience and unity. Others point out the stress such arrangements must have caused, especially during the long, sunless winters when tempers ran thin and everyone stank like boiled seal. Quirky tidbit: archaeologists have found children's toys, tiny boats, carved animals, and little swords, buried in the ashes of longhouses, which means, yes, Viking kids lived, played, and probably stepped on sharp objects just like yours do. Some things never change. Back in your present misery, you begin to notice the weight of the atmosphere. Thick, heavy, like someone threw a wet wool blanket over your entire soul. It's not just the bad air or the bad posture. It's the feeling of being watched, or maybe remembered. The walls hold stories. The beams creak with memory. The longhouse is more than shelter. It's a witness. It has seen births, deaths, weddings, betrayals. You're just another chapter in a book made of smoke and slumber. Eventually, someone stirs the embers and throws on another log. The light flares briefly, illuminating a dozen snoring heads, and one very confused chicken who's now sitting on your boot. You sigh and close your eyes again. You are not alone. You are never alone. And no, you're probably not getting back to sleep. You wake to the gentle sensation of something pecking your forehead. It's the hen again. She's back, and she's bold, perched proudly atop your tangled blanket, as if she owns your face. You shove her off, gently but firmly, and she flutters to the dirt floor with a squawk of betrayal. Outside, it's still pitch black, but inside the longhouse there's a shift in tempo. A few people are stirring. The fire's been stoked. The hearth glows brighter, casting long orange shadows against the timber walls. You're not sure if it's midnight or dawn. Either way, the communal insomnia seems to be warming back up for its next act. You sit up slowly and stretch your arms over your head, your back cracking like old bark. And then, reluctantly, you turn to face the reality that awaits you. Your bed, such as it is not just uncomfortable. It's actively working against you. The straw you slept on is no longer dry. Someone must have spilled water during the night, or mead, or worse. You don't ask questions. You just stand. A quick scan of the longhouse confirms the grim truth. Your bedding situation is probably the best you'll get here. There are no bedrooms. There are no cots. There's certainly no such thing as a pillow. The idea of sleeping alone in a quiet, climate-controlled space with clean sheets, that's luxury from a future 3 continents away. Here in the Viking world, comfort is relative, and comfort means not sharing your bed with fleas, mice, or half your extended family. And yet, you are sharing it with all 3. The straw-filled mattress you have been provided, Reed claimed before someone else did, is made of last season's hay, loosely stuffed into a lumpy cloth sack. And by sack, you mean a rough, hairy wool bag that smells faintly of smoked fish and despair. It crinkles when you shift. It leaks straw through the seams. One of the seams has been sewn up with what looks like horsehair, possibly human. You don't look too closely. And now that you're standing and properly inspecting the sleeping area, you realize how communal wear and tear has eaten away at every edge. The wooden platform beneath your bedding, warped. One side sags ominously, as if it gave up 2 winters ago. Your blanket is more a hide than a textile, thick, itchy, and slightly damp from someone else's breath. You scratch your forearm absent-mindedly. You think it's the wool again, but no, it's definitely fleas. They're awake now, too. You're not the only one with this issue. To your right, a woman is picking lice from her daughter's hair and squishing them between her fingernails with surgical precision. To your left, someone lifts a blanket and shakes it out, releasing a visible puff of dust and dander into the already smoke-choked air. A few people are running their hands through their hair with bone combs, eyes half closed in the flickering light like groggy baboons grooming each other. This is your morning routine now. Fleas, lice, and even bedbugs were common companions in Viking longhouses. Hygiene wasn't non-existent, but it was limited by weather, water access, and time. Baths were often taken in rivers or tubs, but only occasionally, and never in winter unless you liked hypothermia. Historians point to the presence of combs and even tweezers in Viking graves as proof that grooming mattered. But so did enduring discomfort. You crawl back onto your straw pile and try to flatten it back into a vaguely bed-like shape. It's no use. The middle has already collapsed inward, forming a kind of depression that forces your body into the shape of a deflated banana. You fluff it with your hands, managing only to poke yourself with something sharp and suspiciously bone-like. You sigh. At least it's not crawling. Yet. And did we mention the drafts? The longhouse might be enclosed, but it's far from airtight. The thatched roof, packed with reeds and moss, still lets in breezes through unseen cracks. The timber walls groan and shift with every gust of wind. Your platform is just high enough off the floor that the cold air settles beneath it and rises like a haunting, frost-bitten spirit to lick your toes. You pull your wool blanket tighter, tucking your feet under your thighs, pretending this isn't how frostbite starts. Some families used heated stones to warm their bedding, if they had the fuel for it. You don't. So your only heat source is shared body heat and the fire, which, by the way, smokes worse now that someone's thrown wet wood on it. You cough. The smoke here doesn't rise and escape like it does in fairy tales. Without a chimney, the open hearth sends its fumes upward until they hit the roof beams, then back downward in slow motion. If the wind is wrong, it swirls through the house like a confused ghost. Your lungs sting. Your eyes water. You imagine your nose hairs blackening. You sneeze, and it echoes like a cannon blast in the stillness. A few heads turn. Someone chuckles. You're officially awake. Now, as the longhouse starts stirring more fully, you watch as people climb out of their scratchy nests and begin their bleary shuffle toward the hearth. Some warm their hands, others poke at embers with sticks. A man coughs something dark into a cloth and keeps moving. You're not sure whether to be concerned or impressed. You grab a clay mug from the communal shelf and scoop up some lukewarm water from a bucket by the door. You sip carefully. It tastes like bark, smoke, and the faint memory of fish. Hydration, Viking style. As the room slowly brightens, you take a moment to appreciate the beauty that does exist here. The flicker of firelight against the carved wooden support beams, some of them etched with curling serpent motifs. The way the smoke dances through the slats of the roof like it's performing for the gods. The hushed murmur of families waking together, hands brushing hair, passing bowls of porridge, sharing warmth without needing words. Yes, you're miserable. Yes, you'd sell your soul for a mattress, a toothbrush, and 200 square feet of personal space. But you're starting to see what this place is made of. Not just wood and straw, but togetherness. The kind that comes from sleeping 5 deep in the dark with nothing between you and the cold but someone else's foot and a scratchy goat pelt. Historians still argue whether this level of forced proximity created stronger family bonds, or just really good reasons for Vikings to go raiding in spring. Maybe both. You look around at the dozens of bodies wrapped in wool and fur, and you realize something else. You're part of a living machine. Every cough, every footstep, every snore. It all keeps the rhythm of the Longhouse beating through the dark. And that rhythm never sleeps. Your eyes are red, your joints ache, and your blanket still smells vaguely like something that used to bleed. But it's morning now, officially, and the Viking Longhouse is humming to life. The fire is roaring stronger, fed with fresh logs and a determined flurry of bellows from a thrall crouched by the hearth. Smoke curls upward, not escaping so much as lingering with a little more elegance now that people are upright and moving. Shadows sway on the soot-darkened rafters above. A chicken lets out an indignant squawk as someone boots it away from the food scraps. You stretch your arms, your body creaking like the floorboards of a ship. No one announces the beginning of the day. There's no bell, no rooster. He's still half asleep under someone's bed, probably traumatized by the smell, and definitely no alarm clock. You simply rise because everyone else does, and because trying to sleep in a full house of stomping boots, screaming toddlers, and clanking bowls is a doomed pursuit. You follow the crowd toward the hearth. Breakfast in the Viking world is, let's say, functional. No sweet pastries, no eggs with artisan herbs, no syrup, just a warm, heavy porridge made of barley, rye, or oats. Someone's stirred in a bit of dried fish. It smells like sadness and salt. You try not to gag as you scoop some into a carved wooden bowl. You sit back down, cross-legged by the fire, and take your first bite. It sticks to your teeth. The texture is like soggy breadcrumbs glued together with lukewarm seawater. A child next to you is already on their second helping, shoveling it into their mouth like it's cake. You try not to take it personally. One of the older men begins to recite a morning poem, something about wolves and frost and the strength of iron. He's half chanting, half coughing, his voice as cracked as old bark. A few people mutter back in time with him. It's oddly comforting, like a pagan version of a coffee commercial. And just like that, the day begins. This is the Viking routine. Not fast, not flashy, but communal, repetitive, and entirely dependent on everyone showing up, whether for chores, meals, or sheer warmth. After breakfast, the air inside the Longhouse changes again. It's not restful anymore. It's busy. People are pulling on cloaks, lacing boots, gathering tools, stuffing satchels. Someone's feeding the animals in their indoor pens, tossing scraps and refilling troughs. You're starting to notice how every inch of this space is used. Hooks hanging from beams hold dried herbs, ropes, iron tools, and the occasional smoked fish dangling like an oily wind chime. The Longhouse isn't just where you sleep. It's where you cook, mend clothes, dye wool, tell stories, carve weapons, and raise children. It's your kitchen, your bedroom, your pantry, your office, and your lounge. And it never, ever empties completely. Even when most people head out for farming, hunting, or trading, someone stays behind. An elder stirring a pot, a woman spinning flax into thread, a child braiding twine. Even the sick stay here, wrapped in extra furs near the fire, sipping hot broth with cracked lips and hollow eyes. That's another thing that makes sleep in the Viking world a little precarious. You're never far from death. Not in a dramatic, fantasy battle kind of way, but in the mundane, always there kind. An infection, a cough that doesn't go away, a winter that runs too long. These can claim lives silently, even inside the warmth of a longhouse. And those bodies? They're mourned here, right beside you, often before they're even cold. Sometimes people sleep a few feet from a dying elder, trying to get some rest while someone passes quietly in the night. There's no separation between the sacred and the practical. Life and death. Dreaming and surviving. Let's rewind for a second to talk about what the Longhouse really meant to the Vikings. It wasn't just a building, it was the center of the world. Not just shelter from the weather, but from chaos, spirits, and wild things in the dark. The hearth in the middle wasn't just for cooking. It was a spiritual anchor. Fire had meaning. It held back the wolves and trolls and ghosts that lurked beyond the tree line. When night fell, that fire didn't just keep you warm, it kept the world in balance. Some archaeologists suggest that longhouses were designed with symbolic symmetry. Central hearth, symmetrical layout, ends that mirrored one another. It created order in a landscape that offered very little. Remember, this was a world where winter could kill crops, where frost came before harvest, where a single storm could wipe out a fleet. Order was precious. Predictability was sacred. And inside the longhouse, every member of the household had a role to play in maintaining it. You take a break from your second bowl of porridge. Yes, you caved, and glance across the hall. A young boy is stringing beads onto a cord. A thrall is sharpening a small blade on a stone. A woman is washing cloth in a bucket, humming something low and repetitive, like the churn of a boat in shallow water. The quiet industry is almost hypnotic. You lean back against a beam, letting the warmth of the hearth soak into your shoulder blades. It's smoky, yes, and the stench is still a cocktail of wet dog and boiled onions. But there's rhythm here. There's purpose. It's no wonder that so many Norse sagas start and end in these houses. This is where you dream, where you fight, where you get sick, where you fall in love, where you die, and where the next morning someone adds another log to the fire, scoops more porridge into a bowl, and life just keeps rolling forward. Here's something weird. Some Viking longhouses were built on top of older ones. Literally. They'd knock down a structure, flatten it, and build a new one in the same footprint. Scholars still argue whether this was for practical reasons, convenience, shelter from wind, or if it held ritual meaning. Maybe they believed the memory of the house mattered, that the old ghosts kept the new ones company. You sip the last of your water, your throat's soot-lined, your stomach's semi-full, and your body's already aching from the chores to come. And yet you feel, strangely, present. You weren't meant to be comfortable here, but you were meant to belong, even if that belonging comes with shared lice, soggy bedding, cold toes, and smoke-peeled eyeballs. As the longhouse breathes into the new day, you gather your things. A cloak, a dented spoon, and whatever part of your dignity is still intact. You glance once more at your sleeping platform, now occupied by someone else using your blanket as a scarf. You decide not to fight them for it. They look like they need it more. The door creaks open with a sound like a protesting walrus, and icy air rushes in, sharp as a blade. You flinch instinctively, tugging your threadbare cloak tighter around your shoulders. Your boots, still damp from yesterday's snowmelt, squish unpleasantly with every step. But it's time to go outside. You can't avoid it forever. In Viking society, lounging around the Longhouse all day isn't an option unless you're deathly ill, giving birth, or dead. And even then, people would probably ask you to stir the stew while you're at it. Outside, the world is wide and white and unwelcoming. The snow hasn't let up. A thick frost dusts the roof of the Longhouse and clings to the fur trim of your hood like icing on a poorly baked cake. Every surface, rocks, fences, wooden sleds, tools left out overnight, is sheathed in a layer of glassy ice. You inhale. The cold burns your nose in a way that's almost refreshing after the smoky fog of the Longhouse. And then the coughing begins. Not yours, though you're not far off, but from several others who, like you, have emerged into the frigid gray blue of morning. The cold here doesn't just sting. It burrows into your chest like a tenant that never intends to leave. You try to walk it off, but the wind claws at your face. You are not ready for Viking winter. You are not even ready for Viking Wednesday. You glance back at the Longhouse. It's big, longer than a bus, easily. Its sloping roof heavy with snow and walls darkened by centuries of soot and storm. It's not beautiful in a postcard sense, but it's solid. It has outlasted storms and fires and probably 3 uncles who fought over the same chicken. Let's take a moment here to address the architectural marvel of the Longhouse. These structures weren't haphazardly slapped together. Vikings knew how to build things that lasted. Walls were made of thick, vertical posts sunk deep into the ground, connected by horizontal beams, then filled in with planks or wattle and daub, a mix of sticks, straw, and mud that somehow held back rain and wind better than you'd expect. The roof, thatched or covered in turf. That's right, literal grass roofs. They weren't just for aesthetics. They insulated well, held together under heavy snowfall, and, if you were lucky, sprouted wildflowers in spring. Talk about curb appeal. Now, if you're expecting a picturesque little log cabin situation, think again. These houses were low and long and squat, like a loaf of bread with a bad attitude. The main door was often located on the side rather than the end to minimize exposure to wind. Windows were non-existent. Instead, all light had to come from the hearth or from strategically placed oil lamps. Think mood lighting, but without the romance. You pass by a row of wooden posts marking the edge of the animal pens. The goats are awake and already complaining. The cows stare at you with blank-eyed judgment. And the pigs, well, they're pigs. They've turned the snow near their enclosure into a sad, muddy slush that smells like fermented soup. You've been assigned to water duty this morning, which means you'll be trudging to the well with 2 wooden buckets, filling them with near-freezing water, and trudging back while trying not to spill half your weight in icy sloshes down your shins. You grab the buckets, more splinter than handle, and head off. The well is a short walk from the Longhouse, but in snow that comes up to your knees, it feels like a migration. Your boots sink. Your breath comes out in wheezing puffs, and your fingers start to go numb inside their thin leather wrappings. By the time you reach the well, you're sweating under your cloak, which is somehow wetter than when you started. You lower the bucket down on a rope pulley, hear the splash, and begin hauling it up. It's heavier than expected, probably because the ice around the rim hasn't fully melted. You try to tip it carefully into your second bucket. You fail. Water splashes all over your thighs. Your ancestors are laughing at you. As you make your way back, it becomes increasingly clear that Viking winter isn't designed for human beings. It's a test, a long, slow trial by frostbite. It creeps into your bones. It tightens your lungs. It tells you, with every wind gust, go home, drink something warm, knit. But you can't, because you have 5 more tasks after this, and maybe a funeral, depending on how Thora's father is doing. Historians still argue whether longhouses were occupied all year or just in winter months, especially in settlements where people might have had separate summer farmsteads or fishing camps. But what's clear is this. In winter, when the darkness stretched over 18 hours a day and the snow came up to your thighs, the longhouse was your everything, your fortress, your furnace, your social network, your prison. Back inside, your boots steam slightly as you peel them off. Your cloak thuds to the floor, soaked and speckled with ice. You place the buckets by the hearth, where 2 women nod and begin ladling water into a large pot. You've passed your first test of the day. But sleep? Let's talk about that again. Because here's the thing. Even when you're dead tired, sleep doesn't come easily. Not in a house full of chores, children, barking dogs, arguing uncles and livestock with strong opinions about feeding times. There are no naps unless you sneak them. And sneaking naps in a place where everyone sees everything is almost impossible. You think about curling up in the hayloft for 20 minutes, but the smell of stored onions hits you like a sledgehammer. You back down. So instead, you help stir porridge. You mend a hole in your mitten. You help chop some meat, though you're not entirely sure what animal it used to be. And as you work, you listen. Not just to the chatter and laughter and bickering, but to the rhythms. The cough of the old man, the soft humming of a lullaby, the crackle of wood. And you start to realize the Viking longhouse isn't just hard to sleep in, it's hard to sleep through. Because life here doesn't stop. It moves constantly. Not in grand gestures or booming declarations, but in small, persistent moments that don't care whether you got 3 hours of sleep or 5 minutes. You're tired. You're freezing. You smell like porridge and goat. But you're part of the rhythm now. And the rhythm doesn't sleep. It's late afternoon now, or at least that's what the rhythm of the longhouse suggests. Outside, the light hasn't changed much. The sky remains a dim, sour shade of gray, as if the sun itself decided not to bother rising properly today. But the activity inside has shifted. The midday chores are winding down. People are drifting back inside, bringing with them the stink of damp wool, frozen air, and the quiet clatter of tools being set aside. You sag onto the edge of your bedding platform. Your legs throb. Your back feels like someone's replaced your spine with a splintery rake, and your fingers are red from the cold. You've helped carry water, hauled firewood, tried to repair a cracked basket with frozen hands, and failed miserably at scraping a hide without gagging. You've also been farted on by a sheep and accidentally stepped in something that you hope was a puddle. Congratulations. You've earned absolutely no rest. And yet, sleep continues to hover just out of reach. It's not that you aren't exhausted. You are. Your limbs feel like sacks of mead-soaked flour, and you've begun to hallucinate the idea of a mattress as something sacred and glowing. But your surroundings are not cooperating. You lie back against the lumpy straw and shift to your side. You count 3 separate people within arm's reach. One of them is clipping their toenails with a small knife. The other is singing to a baby. The third is eating something you deeply suspect used to crawl. This is not the environment of dreams. And, as if on cue, the fire flares with a pop, sending a fresh stream of smoke slithering toward your face. You cough, roll over, and slam your elbow into a small wooden bowl someone left near the bed platform. The bowl rolls away with a hollow clunk, waking a chicken who had chosen that exact moment to nap. It lets out a shriek, flaps once, and settles indignantly on your foot. This is your moment of reflection. You've survived approximately 1 full day in a Viking longhouse, and your primary takeaway is this: sleep is not a right. It's a tactical achievement. You have to earn your rest, not just with labor, but with awareness, strategy, and brute mental force. You need to find the right moment when people are quiet, animals are subdued, the fire isn't choking you, and the straw beneath you isn't housing a flea circus. That window is brief, precious. Miss it, and you're up until the next opportunity, maybe hours away. You pull the wool hide tighter around yourself and try to quiet your thoughts. Maybe, if you just pretend to sleep, your body will follow. You even start counting imaginary sheep, which feels extra inappropriate considering you're currently sleeping across from 2 real ones. But the Longhouse has other plans. One of the goats in the corner has started snoring. Yes, snoring. It sounds like a dying accordion. A child begins to cry. Not a full meltdown, just that sharp nasal whine that says they've lost something under their blanket. A woman hisses soothing words. Someone else coughs so violently you begin preparing for their funeral in your head. You squeeze your eyes shut and try to block it all out. You imagine silence. You imagine soft linens. You imagine a room where you're the only person breathing. None of it helps. Instead, your mind drifts back to something you overheard earlier. 2 women near the hearth talking about dreams. Not just casual dreams, but omens. One claimed she'd seen her dead brother in a dream the night before, standing at the doorway, soaking wet and silent. She said it meant a storm was coming, or death, or marriage. She wasn't sure which. Dreams in Viking culture weren't just the result of a heavy supper or bad straw. They were messages, warnings, gifts from the gods, or the dead. People took them seriously. A dream of blood might mean war. A dream of teeth falling out. Probably an omen for betrayal. A dream where a raven lands on your chest and caws 3 times. You're definitely doomed. But dreaming requires sleep, and you're still very much awake. You sit up again and rub your eyes. The room is dim now. Twilight inside twilight. The fire crackles steadily, casting orange light onto the carved beams above. Someone throws on a few strips of birch bark, and the flames snap higher for a moment. You catch a glimpse of your own reflection in a polished bronze bowl. You look like a potato that's seen battle. You're not the only one struggling. A teenage boy across the hall is tossing and turning on his fur pile, muttering to himself. An old man has given up entirely and is seated upright, snoring gently with his head tipped back like a broken puppet. A toddler nearby has simply flopped face down across 2 people and passed out mid-wail. You want that level of detachment? You try again. Deep breath. You count heartbeats. You close your eyes. And this time, for just a few seconds, it almost works. Your thoughts begin to drift. You feel yourself slipping towards something softer, quieter. And then someone steps directly on your hand. You let out a sound somewhere between a hiss and a yelp. The person doesn't even notice. They're carrying a bundle of wool and muttering about cold toes. You sit up, cradle your injured fingers, and consider vengeance. Instead, you breathe. Vikings didn't live gently. They couldn't afford to. The Longhouse wasn't built for individual comfort. It was a structure of survival, efficiency, communal strength. If someone had a bad night's sleep, they didn't complain. They got up, they worked, they lived. If they were lucky, they got a better night the next time. You curl back up on your side and begin adjusting the straw again. You shake out the blanket, rearrange the hide. This has become your ritual, your evening prayer. Sleep may not come now, but you're preparing for it anyway. And while you wait, you listen. Not just to the chaos, but to the subtler rhythms beneath it. The quiet thud of someone kneading dough, the creak of a leather strap being tightened, the slow, rhythmic hum of a lullaby being sung in a dialect you don't understand. These are the sounds of survival. And slowly your body begins to soften again. The cold is still there. So is the stink. So is the snoring goat. But your heart rate slows. Your jaw unclenches. Your fingers relax. The rhythm of the house doesn't feel like a battle anymore. It feels like a song you're starting to recognize. A song of people, of breath, of fire, of footsteps, of furs rustling, of someone blowing gently on an ember. This house isn't quiet, but it is constant. And maybe, just maybe, that constancy is what sleep looks like here. You're not sure what time it is now. Early evening, maybe? Midnight? Something between the two? In the Longhouse, time doesn't pass in straight lines. It bends and folds like damp cloth, shaped by firelight, footsteps, and the occasional burst of snoring. You've lost track of how many times you've tried to sleep. You've also lost track of how many people have stepped over, on, or near your body during those attempts. Your neck hurts. Your eyes burn. You've somehow managed to develop both a splitting headache and the sensation of ants crawling under your skin. Spoiler, it's not imaginary. That's just fleas again. But still, you haven't given up entirely. You've reached that strange threshold where you're no longer awake by choice, but simply because being unconscious in this place is harder than being tired. And, as the Longhouse sways into another phase of the night, quiet but never still, you notice something else. It's story time. Again. Not the kind of stories with clear morals and happy endings, but the kind that trickle into conversation while people mend nets, braid wool, or scratch at bites. You tune in from your straw bed, ears half alert. The man across the hearth is talking about a drogger, a restless Viking dead, not buried properly, who wandered the hills near his grandfather's farm. Another voice chimes in with a tale of a seal woman who seduced a fisherman and vanished into the sea with his soul. No one's reading off scrolls or quoting epic poems. These stories are muscle memory, spoken softly, shared between bowls of warm beer and cracked hands. You realize something as you lie there, half frozen and wholly exhausted. This is the Viking version of Netflix. Not the scripted epics, but the weird folklore shows you find at 2 a.m., where a man in a beard talks about cursed caves and glowing sheep. You drift with it. Not asleep, not awake, just hovering in the space between. Someone stirs near you. A woman is adding wood to the hearth, carefully feeding it so the flames rise but don't smoke out the room. She's working with a rhythm born of muscle memory. Scoop, lift, place, blow. You smell the smoke change slightly as the bark catches. A few others murmur appreciation. The fire's warmth pulses outward in lazy waves, and for a moment you're grateful. You lie back and stare at the ceiling beams again. They're coated in soot, as always, but you can make out faded carvings. Runic scratches, stylized animal heads, swirls of patterns worn smooth with age. Some are clearly decorative, others might be protective sigils. Historians still argue whether these marks were functional, sacred, or just the 9th century equivalent of doodling on your desk. Either way, they are the last thing many people saw before drifting off into sleep. You trace them with your eyes, trying not to blink. But even here, especially here, comfort doesn't last. Just as your body starts to feel pleasantly heavy, something scurries across your leg. You sit bolt upright, heart thumping. A rat, a squirrel, a particularly large spider? You're not sure, and honestly, you don't want to know. You slap at your blanket and check the corners of your bedding. Whatever it was, it's gone. Probably off to bother someone else. Welcome to Viking Pest Control. Scream, swat, and accept. Sleep, once again, retreats. A man across the aisle chuckles at your reaction. He lifts a cup in your direction. First time, he says with a grin that could be friendly or mocking. You offer a weak thumbs up and lie back down. There's a lull now. A rare moment when most of the Longhouse has settled into breathing, not bustling. A few bodies stir under furs. Someone coughs twice and rolls over, and the fire crackles on. You seize the opportunity. You close your eyes. And this time, finally, you slip into a kind of sleep. It's not deep, it's not luxurious, but it's real. You dream, too. Not vividly, but fuzzily. Shapes move. Someone's talking to you in a language you don't understand, but somehow you know what they mean. A wolf runs across a field of snow. A longship floats on water that glows like moonlight. You hear laughter. You hear thunder. You feel, not rest exactly, but something close to it. But then, of course, reality returns. You wake to someone shaking your shoulder, gently but insistently. It's time to take your shift at the fire. Because here's another thing you hadn't counted on. In a Viking longhouse, everyone shares the responsibility of keeping the hearth alive. Let it die, and the whole house freezes. Or worse, loses its protection from the dark outside, literal and spiritual. The fire is not just warmth, it's a shield. So you rise, blinking and stiff, and take your place beside the embers. You add a log, you stir the ash, you check the coals, you wipe your nose on your sleeve and try not to shiver. The heat is there, but only in pulses. Your body is still cold. Your head droops. But the fire needs you. You wonder how people did this night after night, year after year. But then again, they didn't do it alone. You're surrounded by bodies. Snoring ones, breathing ones, a few murmuring in their sleep, some twitching from dreams. This is your clan now. They may step on you, steal your bedding, fart in their sleep. But they've also made space for you by the hearth. In the firelight, their faces look soft, worn by weather and time, but human. You don't know all their names. Some of them might not even like you. But in this place, under this roof, you are not alone. Eventually, your shift ends. Someone taps your elbow. You nod and crawl back to your straw pile. It's warmer now, weirdly. Maybe it's the fire. Maybe it's your body surrendering. Maybe it's because someone else's feet are tucked against yours. You lie down and exhale. And at long last, you fall asleep. Truly, properly, deeply. Only for a few hours. But still, you did it. Welcome to Viking rest. You wake up sore, and not just from the straw. Your whole body aches in that quiet, grumbling way that says you've been living like a Viking for too long, and it's only been 2 days. Your shoulders protest, your neck is stiff, and there's a delightful new pain just behind your left knee that wasn't there yesterday. But somehow, you slept. Maybe not well, maybe not all at once, but you did it. And here's the strange part. You almost feel proud. Until you sit up and knock your head on the underside of a low-hanging beam. Welcome back. Morning in the Longhouse isn't marked by sunlight streaming in through glass windows. There are no windows, just the same dark walls, the same curling smoke, and the same musty tang of sweat, ash, fur, and stew. But there are other signs. The fire is higher. There's more movement. Someone is already beating dust out of a blanket. Someone else is calling a child's name in increasingly frustrated tones. A dog barks, then farts, then whimpers and crawls under a bench. You stumble toward the hearth again, knowing by now that it's not just for warmth. It's for orientation. Everything in the Longhouse revolves around it. It is the sun of this tiny universe. And while your fellow dwellers stretch, yawn, and begin the eternal cycle of work, you start to notice something new. You're adapting. Sure, you still smell like a meat cellar. Yes, your boots are wet again. Of course, your blanket is mysteriously missing. But your body no longer flinches at the chill air. You no longer gag quite so violently at the sour beer. You even manage to nod respectfully when a man sneezes directly into his stew. Progress. You also start noticing the systems around you. The rhythm of the day is clearer now. Viking households were built on cycles. Chores, meals, repairs, sleep, repeat. Everyone had a job. Even the children. Especially the children. That boy you saw yesterday chasing a chicken? Today, he's calmly twisting wool into yarn, fingers moving with the speed of someone who's done it since before he could walk. The elderly woman who scolded you for stepping on her comb. She's hunched over a spindle now, murmuring a song that might be a prayer or a shopping list. You're still the out-of-place one. But a few people nod to you now. One even hands you a slice of dried fish. You take it. It tastes like seawater and old rope. But you eat it. That, too, is progress. Then comes the news. A group will be leaving shortly to travel to the next settlement, 2 valleys away. They'll bring goods, woven cloth, carved bone needles, dried apples, and hopefully return with salt, iron tools, and stories. This is not a simple errand. It's a full-day expedition through snow-covered hills and forests where wolves roam, and rivers aren't always frozen enough to cross. You, they decide, will not be joining. You pretend not to be relieved. But truthfully, you weren't built for Viking field trips. You don't even know how to tie your cloak properly, and the last time you tried to help saddle a horse, it stepped on your foot and sneezed on your shoulder. Instead, you'll stay behind, inside the Longhouse, where the older women, children, and those too frail or vital to risk will carry on the important task of everything else. Cooking, cleaning, feeding animals, spinning yarn, stoking the fire, repairing gear. Oh, and maintaining order. Let's talk about Viking household dynamics. Viking homes were rarely nuclear. Multiple generations lived together. Parents, grandparents, cousins, distant relatives, adopted dependents, and servants. Some even had slaves, known as thralls, who were often prisoners of war or debtors. They worked side by side with the family, sometimes indistinguishably. A longhouse wasn't just a family. It was an ecosystem. Everyone depended on each other, whether they liked each other or not. Conflict happened, of course. Arguments about space, chores, or who left a bone in the stew. But the longhouse wasn't a democracy. Authority usually rested with the male head of household, though women, particularly elder matriarchs, held considerable sway. Property could pass through female lines. Divorce was legal and fairly common. and a woman could own land, lead rituals, and even wield weapons, though your current cloak-tying skills suggest that might be a while off for you. Right now, your job is to help with the loom. You didn't know what that meant until 5 minutes ago. But now, here you are, watching a woman demonstrate the warp-weighted loom. An ancient vertical frame where threads are stretched downward and weighted with stones. She moves with grace and rhythm, throwing the shuttle through, beating the weft, adjusting tension with the ease of someone who's done it since she had baby teeth. You try to help. You try very hard. And you produce a piece of weaving so crooked and uneven that the old woman takes it gently from your hands, smiles thinly, and says, "You are better at holding things." So you hold things. Thread, spindles, baskets, pride. The day passes slowly. The snow outside thickens. Wind buffets the turf roof. A chicken escapes, is recaptured, and poops directly into someone's shoe. The fire is stoked. Bread is baked. A child throws a tantrum. An older man tells a story about a sea serpent with golden eyes and barnacles for teeth. And once again, the light dims into that dusky, eternal evening. You sit by the fire, watching steam rise from your bowl. It's porridge again, or soup, or possibly a mistake. Either way, you eat it. And you think about sleep. Not the fantasy of it, pillows, mattresses, weighted blankets, but the version you now understand. Sleep as survival. Sleep as negotiation. Sleep as something earned, shared, and frequently interrupted. You lie down early tonight, earlier than usual, and somehow, even before the house fully settles, even before the fire is banked and the whispering dies down, you begin to slip. The straw is still lumpy. The blanket is still itchy. Someone's breath still smells like onions. But your body doesn't care. It is tired. It is learning. And this time, sleep comes quickly, sliding over you like a fog from the fjord. And for once, nothing wakes you. Not the cough. Not the barking. Not even the goat. You wake up slowly, your body reluctant to rejoin the world. For a moment, you're not even sure where or who you are. The straw beneath you, the weight of the wool hide over your legs, the low amber flicker of a rekindled hearth. It's all starting to feel familiar. And yet, your spine disagrees. It cracks in 5 places the moment you sit up. You groan. Someone laughs. It's unclear whether they're amused or just having a good dream. The morning routine is already underway. You can tell because there's shouting, not the angry kind, just the practical kind of shouting that means, "Where's the ladle?" or "Who moved the firewood?" or "You left the cheese too close to the dog again." The smell of cooking barley fills the longhouse, thick and warm and slightly scorched. You sit up and rub your eyes. Somehow, miraculously, you slept through the night. Sure, your arm's gone numb from lying on it, and yes, your cheek is imprinted with the woven texture of your blanket. But for the first time since arriving, your brain isn't clouded in sleep-deprived fog. You're still tired, of course. Viking life is tired. But it's the kind of fatigue that says, you're adapting. And then someone hands you a pot. You are now on breakfast duty. To your credit, you manage not to spill it. You stir the porridge with something that looks suspiciously like the end of a walking stick. A woman beside you adds dried berries. Someone else adds salt. Someone else adds fish. You try not to react. Vikings didn't draw sharp lines between breakfast and dinner flavors. You, on the other hand, are gagging internally. As the pot bubbles, people gather. You serve the meal in wooden bowls, hand-carved and darkened by years of use. Some are cracked, a few are scorched. One looks like it used to be part of a boat. but no one complains. They eat in silence or low conversation, hunched over the bowls like pilgrims. After eating, the house empties again. Not fully, never fully, but the younger, stronger adults head out for wood, ice fishing, or hunting. The children scatter. The older members shift into repair work. You're asked to help soften leather. This involves soaking a stiff hide in lukewarm water, stretching it by hand, and occasionally gnawing the edges. Yes, gnawing. The enzymes in your saliva, they tell you, help break down the fibers. You have never missed hand lotion more. As you work, the woman beside you hums a strange tune. It loops in a minor key, the melody shifting subtly each verse. You ask what it is. She says it's for keeping away the huldufolk, the hidden people. You blink. She says it casually, like you might say, "This tea helps me sleep." You ask if she believes in them. She shrugs. Not believing is dangerous too. The Vikings, you're learning, lived in a world steeped in beliefs that bled into daily life. There was no sharp line between the practical and the spiritual. Spirits dwelled in hills, ancestors whispered in the smoke, and dreams carried warnings. You once read this kind of thing in books, probably skimmed over it, thinking quaint. But now, in this world of flickering light and ceaseless cold, it doesn't seem quaint at all. It seems obvious. Because when the walls creak at night, when the shadows stretch oddly across the beams, when the wind howls with what sounds like a voice, it's easier to believe you're not entirely alone, and that someone, or something, might be watching. A boy runs in, cheeks flushed, snow dripping from his sleeves. He speaks quickly, urgently. The room stirs. People listen. Then, movement. A man grabs a rope. Another puts on boots. A woman hands you a bundle of cloth and gestures for you to move. You have no idea what's happening, but you follow. Turns out, one of the goats gave birth early. In the snow, by the edge of the forest. You're running now. Breath burning your throat, feet slipping in the slush. When you arrive, the goat is alive, but barely. So is the kid. They bring them back in, wrapped in furs, bodies steaming. You help carry one of the bundles, amazed at how warm and small it is. Inside, the Longhouse becomes a makeshift clinic. Someone brings herbs. Another heats water. The goat groans. The baby bleats. It's chaos, and it's coordination. Everyone has a role, even if that role is get out of the way. You watch as they rub the kid dry with wool, speak softly to the mother goat, tuck warm stones around them both. And just like that, another life has entered this freezing, noisy, smoky house. It's a moment of quiet awe. And then someone sneezes directly into your bowl. Back to reality. You clean up, dry off, and take another shift tending the fire. The embers are stubborn today. You coax them, layering dry sticks with careful patience. Someone tosses a handful of dried herbs into the flame. The air smells of thyme and burnt hair. You stare into the fire and think. You think about how this Longhouse isn't a building. It's a body. It breathes, groans, feeds itself. It holds people, heat, stories, births, deaths. It's a belly, a rib cage, a womb, and you are inside it. And maybe, for the first time, you are starting to understand how people could live like this for a lifetime. It's not comfortable, but it's coherent. You know your place. You know the rhythm. You're part of it now. But sleep, real, uninterrupted sleep, is still elusive. That night, you try again. You pile your bedding more carefully this time. You warm your blanket by the fire first. You find a corner less trampled than the others. You plug your ears with bits of wool, a trick someone showed you earlier, and it almost works. But just as you drift off, someone's foot finds your rib cage in the dark. You groan, but you don't curse. You don't get up. You simply shift, sigh, and sink again. This time, you fall asleep faster. Not because it's easier, but because it's starting to feel normal. You don't remember falling asleep. That's the first sign it was real. Not fitful, not broken, not that half-sleep where every creak yanks you back to life. No, this was the kind of sleep that snuck in quietly and took over before your body could argue. You remember lying down, maybe scratching at a flea bite on your ankle, then nothing. Just the sensation of time passing like fog. Now, you're awake, groggy and stiff, but rested. You blink against the gloom. It's morning, or something like it. The Longhouse has its own clock. The creaking of feet, the thud of boots, the rising hiss of the hearth, the low voices murmuring around you. No one announces the start of the day, but it begins anyway. You sit up and stretch. Your shoulders crack. Something tugs in your lower back. You groan and check your limbs. Still attached, still cold. Progress. Around you, the house is shaking off sleep. A boy pulls a tunic over his head with his eyes still closed. A woman ladles gruel into a pot while her other hand soothes a baby swaddled against her chest. Someone, somewhere, is coughing. A slow, chest-deep bark that's been making the rounds. You briefly check your throat. So far, you're winning. But winter has a long memory. The air smells thick with smoke and sour breath, and what is that? Fermented herring? Boiled barley? Some kind of dried animal part? You don't ask. You've learned it's often better not to. You slide off the straw pile and head for the fire, weaving through limbs, cloaks, and at least one dog who's decided that your bedding is now his. You step over a bucket, duck under a beam, and finally settle in near the hearth, where the warmth greets you like an old friend who still owes you money. Someone hands you a bowl of porridge. You eat without thinking. It's bland, gritty, and scalding. You finish it anyway. And that's when you get your assignment for the day, cleaning the latrine bucket. No, you didn't miss here. The latrine bucket. You stare at the person giving you the task, hoping it's a joke. It's not. They smile in that way. People smile when they've done the job before and are delighted that now it's your turn. In the absence of indoor plumbing, the Vikings used chamber pots or night buckets, especially in winter, when stepping outside at midnight meant braving frostbite, wolves, and whatever spirits were said to wander the dark. So instead, people did their business in containers, and those had to be emptied. Guess who's the new bucket bearer? You grip the wooden handle, trying to breathe through your mouth. The bucket is surprisingly heavy. You don't want to think about why. You carry it outside, your boots crunching on the frozen ground. Every step is an exercise in gag suppression. The pit is behind the Longhouse, shielded by rough fencing and a thin wall of trees. You dump the contents, gag once, only once, and then rinse the bucket with snow, grit, and your fading will to live. Your fingers are numb by the time you're done, your nose frozen, and your pride irreparably damaged. But the bucket is clean. Another Viking rite of passage completed. Back inside, no one applauds. No one thanks you. But someone hands you a slice of flatbread without saying a word. In this place, that's probably the equivalent of a medal. The Longhouse has resumed its daily rhythm. Tools clink, wool is spun, small repairs are made with fingers that never stop moving. You sit down near the hearth again, cheeks still red from the cold, and slowly chew your reward. It's stale and has the texture of old bark, but it's food. You eat it. Your next job is less degrading, helping to mend cloaks. You're not sewing anything important. You're threading thick sinew through small holes in leather, reinforcing seams worn down by rain and time. Your fingers fumble with the thread, clumsy and slow. A woman named Asdis watches you, lips twitching as she resists the urge to correct you for the 5th time. "Not like that," she says eventually, plucking the work from your hands. You're trying to fight it. You have to coax it. You're pretty sure she's talking about the thread, but it also feels like a general life lesson. So you nod solemnly, as if you've just been handed the wisdom of the gods. She finishes the repair in seconds. You move on to a more suitable task, sorting feathers. Goose feathers, to be specific. They're being saved for arrow fletching, pillows, and occasionally stuffing small sacks meant to warm the beds of infants. The feathers tickle your nose, float into your lap, cling to your sleeves. You sneeze at least 6 times. Later, you help grind dried herbs. You don't know what they are, some kind of bitter-smelling leaves. But you're told they're for coughs. Maybe for the barking man in the corner. Maybe for the goats. It's hard to tell. As you grind, a young girl settles beside you with a lump of beeswax and begins to shape it into tiny figurines. She hums softly as she works, and you realize she's copying the carvings from the beams above. Stylized animals, curving lines, runes. You ask her what they mean. She shrugs. "My mother says they protect us. My uncle says they're just for decoration. My grandmother says they keep the draugr out." Who's right? All of them. That's the thing about Viking belief. It wasn't clean-cut. It was layered, messy, lived in. Some carvings were for the gods, some were for memory, some were for aesthetics, and some no one remembered anymore. They just were. You finish the herbs and help gather firewood. The pile outside is buried in snow, and your gloves are barely more than stitched-together regrets. But you manage. You drag a few logs in, stacking them near the hearth. Someone nods in approval. You bask in it. Evening settles early, as it always does. The sky darkens to a thick charcoal. The fire becomes the center of the world again, and the Longhouse settles into its familiar, chaotic peace. Someone begins to sing. Not loudly, not professionally, but softly. Just a woman rocking her baby with a voice like weathered linen. Others join in, barely above a whisper. It's not a song you know, but you feel its age. It's been sung in rooms like this for hundreds of years. You close your eyes and let it wash over you. Later, you lie down again. Same straw, same hide, same wool-stuffed sack you call a pillow. But tonight, you do something new. You roll to your side, tuck your feet behind someone else's knees, just slightly, and share warmth like you've seen everyone else do. No one protests. This is how you survive the night. You close your eyes and listen to the sounds you once hated. Coughing, snoring, farting, muttering, creaking. Now they feel like a lullaby. The noise means life. The fire means safety. The stink, still awful, but it's your awful now. You fall asleep faster than ever. And this time, you dream. Not of escape. Not of your old bed, but of a boat gliding silently through mist. A seal watching you from the shore. A fire flickering in a distant hall. You wake before dawn, but not because of noise, just because it's time. And you are ready. You're awake before most, and for once, not because someone elbowed you in the face. There's a strange, precious quiet hanging in the Longhouse. the kind that only exists for a few brief minutes before the day begins to rattle to life. You lie on your back for a moment, watching the smoke spiral toward the dark rafters. A few feet away, someone snores softly beneath a patchy fir. In the distance, a chicken clucks with a kind of righteous indignation that makes you wonder if it's dreaming. You sit up slowly, joints groaning like an old barn door. Your back feels like it's made of carved oak. Your hips pop when you stand. But still, this is the least terrible you've felt upon waking in days. You've adjusted somehow. Not completely, but enough. Your body is no longer in open revolt. It's more of a silent protest now. You make your way toward the hearth. The coals are low, but not dead. You kneel and stoke them with practiced hands, laying dry sticks with just the right spacing. A few embers spark. The fire breathes. You've learned to coax warmth from the ashes without turning the house into a smoke pit. This might not sound like a big deal. But in a Viking longhouse, it's practically a resume skill. Someone grunts behind you, waking. Another person shuffles toward the fire, draping a blanket around their shoulders. Soon, the daily buzz begins again. Yawns, stretching. The familiar chorus of sneezes, coughs, and the unmistakable sound of someone peeing into a bucket in the corner. You used to recoil. Now, you just shift your bowl a little farther from the splash zone and carry on. Breakfast today is barley mash with dried seaweed, and something you really hope isn't last night's leftover fish skin. You eat it anyway. Calories are currency. And you've learned the hard way that turning down food here gets you side-eyed, like you've rejected a blessing. You're given a new task today, tending the drying racks. The air in the longhouse may be smoky and stale, but it's also warm and dry enough to preserve meat, herbs, and fish. Assuming you keep everything well arranged and safe from rats, toddlers, and particularly ambitious dogs. The drying racks hang near the upper beams, suspended by rope. You climb a crude wooden ladder, balance yourself on a narrow crossbeam, and begin rearranging strips of dried fish with cold, stiff fingers. The smell is, well, let's just say it's not subtle. Your eyes water. Your stomach does a somersault. And somewhere below, you hear someone laughing softly at your misery. The upper level gives you a new view of the longhouse. You can see it all now. Every corner, every crack, every bedroll, every ember. From above, the space seems less chaotic, more deliberate. People work in tiny loops of motion, fixing, folding, scraping, mending. Children move between the grown-ups like little satellites, fetching tools, stirring pots, chasing the occasional escaped duck. It's a hive, a single, heaving, breathing creature. You descend the ladder slowly, trying not to fall face first into a bundle of drying animal guts. Someone calls you over next to help with snow-melting duty. It's not glamorous, but it's vital. Fresh water isn't drawn from a tap. It's harvested in frozen chunks and melted by the fire, bucket by bucket. You shovel snow into iron pots, set them near the embers, and wait. Slowly, painfully, it melts into tepid water that's used for washing, cooking, or, on good days, drinking. As you work, an older man joins you. He doesn't say much, just sits nearby, sharpening a blade with a rhythmic scrape. After a while, he glances your way and says, "You've stopped flinching." You blink. Flinching? He nods. At everything. Fire, smell, babies screaming, dog farts. You don't look like you're suffering anymore. You think about it. He's right. You've stopped reacting with horror to things that used to send you gagging or sprinting for the exit. You still notice them, but now they're background noise. just part of the Longhouse soundtrack. The man smiles, small and crooked. That means you're part of it now. The house doesn't let you in. You have to get in yourself. You don't know what to say to that. So you nod. He sharpens the blade a few more times, then stands, stretches his back with a painful grunt, and walks off. Later, you help mend snowshoes with sinew and ash wood. You thought they were just rustic tennis rackets for your feet. Turns out, they're engineering marvels. The design varies from region to region, and here in the fjords, they're made wide for soft snow, with enough flex to allow natural gait. As you tighten the binding, a woman tells you a story about a man who got lost during a blizzard and survived by making snowshoes from a frozen codfish. You laugh. Is it true? You ask. She shrugs. It's a good story. Fair enough. In the afternoon, a group returns from the outer fields dragging a freshly killed deer. It takes 6 people to haul it inside. There's blood, fur, steam. The smell is coppery and sharp. The children gather around, curious but quiet. You're ushered into a line of helpers, holding, rinsing, preparing tools. The deer is skinned with practiced efficiency, the meat sorted, the organs cleaned. Nothing is wasted. The hooves will become tools. The hide, clothing, the sinew, thread, the bones, needles or ornaments, the fat, candles and salves. You're reminded again. This is a world with no trash. Everything is transformed. And in some strange way, that includes you. You're no longer the useless outsider, no longer the awkward guest. You've stitched, scraped, washed, melted, repaired. You've cleaned the bucket, flinched less, slept more. You still smell like burnt meat and stale sweat, but you belong. That night, something extraordinary happens. No one wakes you. No one steps on you. No one kicks over the bucket. The fire doesn't go out. The baby doesn't cry. The dog sleeps through the night. You sleep. 7 straight hours. In the dark silence, wrapped in musty furs, surrounded by snoring strangers and the stink of onions and wool, you sleep like royalty. When you wake, the Longhouse is already stirring. Someone is baking. You smell smoke and butter and, miracle of miracles, cinnamon. Someone must have traded for it. It's rare, precious. You inhale deeply and smile. You sit up, stretch, and look around. Same walls, same beams, same smoky air. But today it feels different. Today it feels like home. You wake up to the sound of dripping. Slow, steady, rhythmic. Not the unpleasant kind that leaks from a ceiling or nose, but the almost meditative plink of melting snow sliding from the eaves and landing in a wooden bucket just outside the Longhouse wall. Spring is coming. Or at least, a Viking's version of spring, which still involves icy wind and a high chance of slipping and fracturing a tailbone on frozen mud. But there's something new in the air. It smells faintly of moss instead of just fire smoke and sweat. And the light creeping through the slats isn't the dull blue of midwinter. It's a brighter gray, edged with gold. You roll over slowly and find that the straw beneath you is less damp than usual. Your back doesn't scream, only mutters. You've long since stopped hoping for comfort. Now you grade each morning on a curve of survival, and by that measure, today is already a solid B+. You sit up, stretch your arms overhead, and catch a glimpse of the Longhouse from a new angle. Something is different. There's movement, more than usual. People are quickly packing bundles, pulling on cloaks, sorting ropes and sacks. There's energy in the air, buzzing like a storm about to break. You throw on your tunic and shuffle toward the hearth, where someone has kindly left a pot of barley porridge simmering. It smells slightly burnt and entirely familiar. You scoop some into a wooden bowl and shovel it into your mouth without flinching. Congratulations. You've officially reached the stage where Viking breakfast no longer feels like punishment. As you chew, someone finally explains the buzz. The ice has started breaking on the river. That may not sound like a reason to mobilize an entire household, but for this Longhouse, it means fishing. Real, spring fishing, not the tedious hole-in-the-ice kind. It's a communal event, a supply run, a social outing, a back-breaking chore and mild holiday all rolled into one. You're invited to join. Scratch that. You're expected to join. You're handed a coil of rough rope, a pack stuffed with oilskin cloaks, and a slightly bent iron hook that you suspect has gutted more fish than you've eaten in your entire life. Someone points to a sled stacked high with nets and baskets. You're assigned to the hauling team. Of course you are. Outside, the world feels enormous. You've been tucked inside a smoky wooden womb for weeks, and now, stepping into the light, your eyes sting. The air is cold, but not deadly. The trees glisten with frost, but patches of brown earth have begun to peek through the snow like shy creatures waking from hibernation. Birds you haven't heard since your first miserable night here are singing again, tentatively but present. You trudge behind the sled, boots sinking in slush, the rope biting into your palms. The path to the river is uneven. Half-melted snowbanks, slick mossy rocks, and branches just waiting to snag your cloak. You stumble 3 times, swear quietly once, and nearly twist your ankle stepping into a hidden puddle. But you keep going. The river, when you reach it, is glorious. Wide, black, swift, and free of ice in long ribbons across the surface. Steam rises where snowmelt meets current. On the opposite bank, pine trees reflect like jagged teeth in the water. It's cold, untamed, and roaring with life. This is where food comes from now. Not a grocery aisle or a drive-through window, but here. Water, nets, teamwork, and luck. Setting up takes hours. The nets are long and heavy, made of horsehair and flax, patched in places with whatever thread was available over the years. Some knots are older than you. The poles used to stretch them are staked into the riverbank with force and curses. The current pulls and tugs, trying to reclaim everything you place. You're not a fisherman. You're not even sure how much of this you're doing correctly. But no one complains. You haul when told, tie when asked, and sweat in the cold like everyone else. There's something meditative about the waiting. The line goes slack, then tightens. Someone checks the stakes. Others sit near the sled, whittling small shapes from driftwood or swapping stories. You settle beside them and listen. One man tells a tale of a woman who caught a sea spirit in her net and married it. They say she still sings to sailors from beneath the waves. Someone else swears the river has moods, that it can favor certain people, bless them with a bounty, or curse them with tangled lines and lost poles. Historians still argue whether those tales come from superstition or actual sightings, someone says, biting into a strip of dried meat. But either way, no one dares fish alone when the mist rolls in. You nod sagely and pretend you haven't spent most of your life assuming rivers were just rivers. Eventually, the nets begin to twitch, then thrash. Fish. The first haul is modest. Silver trout, a few eels, something that looks like a prehistoric catfish with eyebrows. You're handed a basket and told to carry it back. It leaks. It flops. You nearly drop it 3 times, and you're not entirely convinced one of the eels didn't hiss at you. But you make it. Back at the Longhouse, the the scene explodes into organized chaos. Fires are stoked higher. Knives are sharpened. Baskets are laid out. Children are shooed away from the writhing piles of fresh catch. You're told to start gutting. It's not your first time anymore. You still gag a little, but now you do it with dignity. Slice, scoop, toss, repeat. You work alongside others, sleeves rolled up, apron soaked, shoulders aching. It's gross, but it's satisfying. You're making food, you, with your own sore hands. Evening arrives with the smells of roasting fish, charred herbs, and wood smoke. The Longhouse glows golden from within. For once, the fire doesn't feel like a necessity, but a comfort. Dinner is loud, filled with laughter. You eat with your fingers. You lick grease from your thumb. Someone offers you a cup of mead and calls you by a nickname they've clearly invented on the spot. You don't understand it, but everyone laughs, so you do too. After the plates are cleared and the baskets emptied, a liar appears. A woman sings a ballad about a fisherman who caught the moon in his net. Children curl up beside their parents. The goats are herded into a far corner and bleat quietly in protest. You lie back on your bedding and stare at the beams overhead. Just weeks ago, this place was a prison. A confusing, noisy, smelly nightmare. Now it's not soft, but steady. Not gentle, but dependable. You realize you haven't thought about your phone in days, or hot showers, or electric blankets. You've been too busy trying to survive, trying to learn, trying to be here. And somehow, slowly, it's worked. Your body remembers the routine. Your fingers know the knots. Your back adjusts to the ache. Your brain, finally, is quiet. Tonight, as the fire flickers and feet twitch beside your straw pile, you fall asleep easily. Not because the Longhouse is comfortable, but because it's become familiar. And in a world like this, familiar is everything. You wake with your knees pressed awkwardly into someone's ribs and their elbow firmly planted across your scalp. You don't even flinch anymore. You just roll a few inches sideways, dislodging a wayward boot from your hip, and stretch your arms into the faint warmth that still lingers from the fire. It's your second week in the Longhouse, and though no part of your sleep has been what you'd call restful, something has shifted. You no longer jerk awake in a panic every time someone coughs. You don't instinctively panic when you smell burning hair, because you know it's probably just someone leaning too close to the fire again. This morning, though, there's a different kind of tension in the air. There's noise, rustling, hammering, shuffling, and a low murmur of voices that feels more urgent than usual. A few children are being wrangled into thick cloaks. Tools are being fetched, buckets filled, bundles prepared. You hear someone say the word storm. You sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes with the heel of your palm. A storm? Then it hits you. The roof. A storm's coming, and that means the turf roof. Your precious shield from the elements. Your smoky but loyal overhead guardian. Needs to be checked, patched, and secured. Because in a Viking longhouse, roof failure isn't just an inconvenience. It's a catastrophe. You've seen how the turf sags in places, how the snow settles into uneven mounds that could easily become leaks, or worse. You've heard stories of longhouses that collapsed after heavy rain. Water trickling in first, then mud, then rot. Without a roof, the fire dies, the furs grow moldy, and every single person becomes an unhappy, frostbitten pancake. So today's task is urgent, and everyone's involved. You're handed a woven basket, a curved iron blade, and a wooden rake with teeth like a comb for giants. Someone points you to the side ladder and grunts, "Up!" It's time to maintain the roof. Climbing it is a challenge in itself. The ladder is little more than a series of split logs lashed together, slick with snowmelt and groaning under your weight. As you ascend, each rung shifts slightly beneath your feet, adding just enough terror to keep things interesting. When you reach the top, you realize just how alive the roof really is. It's not just a layer of straw or tiles, it's an entire micro-landscape. The turf has started to sprout with early green shoots. Patches of moss spread like miniature forests across the incline. Thin rivulets of meltwater snake through the thatch, glinting in the morning light. It's oddly peaceful up here, like you've climbed onto the back of some great, slumbering beast. But there's no time for poetry. You've got a job to do. You crouch and begin trimming the wild overgrowth. The curved blade slices through the turf with satisfying resistance. Your hands are already numb, but you persist, cutting back anything that threatens the delicate balance of weight, water, and warmth. Someone beside you calls out, "Don't cut the crowgrass." You pause. What? Crowgrass. The thin one, smells like onions. Good for the goats. You blink, inspecting the greenery. Sure enough, there's a small patch of stringy purplish shoots tucked beneath the moss. You leave it alone. The goats do deserve something for not trampling your bed last night. As you continue, you realize just how complex this task is. Every patch of turf is layered. Grass, then soil, then woven birch bark beneath. Too much cutting, and you expose the structure to rain. Not enough, and it turns into a jungle. Moss holds moisture, but also traps it. Birch bark repels water, but cracks over time. And if you let the roots go too deep, they'll split the entire system apart from within. Historians still argue, someone mutters nearby, whether the turf roof came from necessity or just laziness. You chuckle. Because while it might look rustic, this roof is a feat of ancient engineering. And right now, you're standing on top of it, elbows deep in its maintenance, as though you've always known how to do this. You rake, slice, pull, adjust. You use small stones to weigh down loose bark. You stuff handfuls of dried moss into soft spots to shore up insulation. You trim ivy that's dared to root in one corner. Your legs are shaking. Your shoulders ache. At one point, you sneeze and nearly pitch face first into a patch of wild thyme. But the view is spectacular. From here, you can see beyond the Longhouse, down the sloping field to the tree line, past the trails etched by goats and humans alike. The fjord glimmers in the distance. The clouds have thickened, yes, but the wind is still quiet for now. You spot other rooftops, too. Smaller homes, sheds, animal enclosures. You're part of something bigger than just your longhouse. You're perched on one square of a living patchwork of homes and fields and fire pits and fences, all bracing for weather together. By midday, your hands are filthy and your knees are damp. Someone clambers up to pass around wooden mugs of warm broth. It tastes faintly of fish and herbs, and it's the best thing you've had in days. While you rest, an older man tells a story about a roof that once grew so lush, a pair of foxes made their den in it. When the thatch started to collapse, they refused to leave. The family, unable to evict them, just built a second roof over the first one. Double-decker house, he chuckles. Didn't leak, but the fleas were terrible. You shake your head and smile. The sky begins to darken in earnest by late afternoon. The clouds now look heavy, thick-bellied and bruised, like they're holding back a sea. The wind has picked up, too. You feel it tug at your cloak, whistling over the ridge like a warning. Everyone works faster now. You tie down the final bundles of moss, tuck in the last flaps of bark, and pin the edges with small wooden stakes. The woman next to you nods approval. Good seal, won't leak. You climb down the ladder slowly, legs trembling from the long crouch. Once on the ground, you stretch your back and shake out your arms. Every muscle complains, but inside you feel a kind of solid warmth. Not comfort, exactly. Satisfaction. The storm hits just after dusk. It begins with a light patter of rain on the roof, soft, tentative. Then it thickens into a steady drumming, then a roaring percussion. The wind follows, rattling the longhouse with long howls that rise and fall like distant horns. The goats bleat nervously. The fire flickers. Someone pulls a heavy fur over the entrance to keep the draft out. And yet, the roof holds. No leaks, no drips, no sudden downpour through the rafters. You glance up, half expecting a stray drop to fall onto your forehead. Nothing. The air inside the longhouse stays warm and dry. People relax. They settle into their spots around the fire. Some mend clothing. Others tell stories. The mood is cautious but content. You've all done the work, and now you're reaping its reward. Shelter. You stretch out on your straw bed, hands still tingling from the rake. The storm outside continues. Angry, relentless. But it can't touch you now. For once, the longhouse isn't just a place you've been trying to survive in. It's a fortress you helped maintain. As the wind howls beyond the walls, you smile. This roof isn't perfect, but tonight, it's enough. And so are you. You wake to a sound you haven't heard in days. Silence. Not the tense, watchful kind, like the hush before a predator pounces, but a peaceful, satisfied stillness. No howling wind, no dripping roof, no snoring goats even. Just the low, rhythmic breaths of a longhouse full of exhausted people. You blink in the dim light, stretch beneath your slightly damp blanket, and realize the storm is over. You survived it. More importantly, the roof survived it. You sit up slowly. The aches in your shoulders and knees are still there. Souvenirs from your turf-top yoga session yesterday. But they feel earned, almost comforting. Your fingers run along the edge of your straw bed, and for once, the straw isn't soaked. Not even a little. You give the rafters above a nod of approval. They're holding. Around you, people begin to stir. A man coughs. A child rolls over and kicks her father in the ribs. Someone farts with the casual confidence of a person absolutely certain no one will call them out on it. You smile. As the longhouse wakes, something else shifts in the air. You feel it before anyone says it out loud. Today will be different. It's cleaning day. Now, you might think, really? After all that, after fishing and climbing roofs and surviving a storm, now is the time to deep clean? But that's exactly how the Viking Longhouse operates. You take advantage of the calm while you can. Because tomorrow it might be snowing again, or raining, or pillaging season might begin. So you pull yourself to your feet, grab a broom made of bundled twigs tied with twine, and prepare yourself for the uniquely humbling experience of cleaning up after 2 weeks of communal indoor living with 30 humans and 4 goats. Where to begin? Well, for starters, ash. The hearth is the heart of the longhouse, source of heat, cooking, light, and also roughly a metric ton of fine gray powder that settles into every corner, hair follicle, and ear canal. You kneel by the stone ring and begin scooping out the layers of spent ash, working carefully so you don't scatter more than you collect. Next comes straw duty. The bedding in a Viking longhouse isn't changed regularly. It's not really changed at all. But when things get really grim, when too many spilled bowls, baby accidents, and goat hooves have passed over the same patch, then it's time to rake it all out and replace it with fresh bundles. You get the joy of hauling the used straw out the back door. It's heavy with moisture, sour with old sweat, and crawling with things you refuse to name. As you drag it across the threshold, a dog sniffs it hopefully. You glare. It slinks away. Outside, someone hands you a bundle of new straw. It smells sweet and sharp, like sun-dried grass and hard work. You lug it back in and begin layering it into the sleeping corners, fluffing it up like a Viking hotel maid. Mid-morning brings another joyful chore. Latrine pit patrol. You were hoping someone else would get that honor. You really were. But when the elder woman looked around the room, caught your eye, and handed you a wooden shovel without a word, you knew it was your destiny. You hold your breath, trudge out behind the longhouse, and begin the careful, revolting task of shoveling out the waste pit. There's straw mixed in to help with the smell. It does not help. You will never eat stew again without thinking of this moment. Back inside, spirits are surprisingly high. Cleaning day isn't exactly fun, but it's shared. There's a rhythm to it, a unity. People joke more. They bump elbows. They laugh when a broom snaps or when someone discovers a child's lost sock wedged into the rafters. You scrub benches. You sweep corners. You wipe soot from wooden beams with a damp cloth and a prayer. And slowly, the longhouse begins to shine. Not literally. Nothing here sparkles. But it breathes easier. The air clears. The fire burns brighter. The straw smells better. The floor feels solid beneath your feet instead of vaguely squishy. You pause by the hearth and watch the room. People move with purpose. Yes, but also with ease. Everyone knows where things go, where they've been, what still needs doing, including you. Because the biggest change of all isn't the clean straw or the dry roof. It's you. You're not flinching anymore. You're not guessing. You know where the spare firewood is kept. You can gut a fish in under a minute, and you barely gag. You know which goat likes her ears scratched, and which one will headbutt you for fun. You know how to wake without waking others, how to move in darkness, how to tend fire. You've learned how to live without privacy, without plumbing, without personal space. You've adapted, and just in time. As the cleaning ends and the sun begins to drop behind the trees, someone announces that a ship has arrived in the bay. A murmur spreads through the longhouse. People rush to the door. You follow. At the edge of the fjord, a longship bobs gently on the tide. Its carved prow cuts the sky like a tooth. Men leap from the sides into shallow water, dragging crates, sacks, barrels. Trade goods. The first outside contact in weeks. You're not sure if they're raiders, merchants, or both. Possibly both. It's often the same crowd. But the point is clear. Life is moving again. The isolation of winter is breaking. The world is returning. You turn back toward the longhouse. Your longhouse. It's not comfortable. It's not modern. It's definitely not sanitary by any current standard. But it's functional. Alive. Real. And for all its smoke and stink and shared body heat, it feels like a home. You return inside as others begin preparing for the new arrivals. Food is stirred. Extra bowls are set out. Children comb their hair with bone picks. The fire is stoked again. You lie down on your bed of fresh straw. It crinkles pleasantly beneath you. Your bones ache, but not in protest, just in acknowledgement. You've earned every creak and bruise. The sky darkens. The firelight flickers. A distant drumbeat echoes from the ship. Someone hums, and slowly, deliciously, you begin to drift. You no longer fear this place. You no longer feel like an outsider. You've learned the rhythms, the hardships, the daily triumphs of Longhouse life. You're not surviving anymore. You're sleeping. And this time, it comes easily. And now, as you lie in the softness of imagined straw and firelight, let the storm slip away. Let the goats go quiet. Let the Longhouse hum fade to nothing more than a low warmth around you. The rafters creak once, a friendly sigh, as if they too have settled in for the night. Outside, the fjord laps gently against its rocky shore. Somewhere in the distance, a gull calls. Then silence again. No footsteps, no shouting, no axes or ash or snow. Only you. Only sleep. Your hands still remember the rake. Your feet still feel the straw. But your thoughts are floating now, light as mist over the morning field. And the Longhouse breathes with you. Safe. Whole. Sheltered. Sleep well, little Viking.